G'day lads, this is part 1 of how to create a model predicting the newly announced NBA in-season tournament in Excel, and in this video you'll be able to go from a blank sheet to a simulated table of standings for each group. If you want downloadable access to this model as well as an exclusive community of sports modelers, click the Excel Lads Patreon link in the description below and become an official lad. The first step of the model, lads, is to collect the 2022 to 23 NBA team stats. So in column A, I've got the list of 30 teams, and then in column B onwards, points scored per game, points against per game, field goal attempts plus free throw attempts, and then 2-point, 3-point, free throw percentages. And then this 2PA possession is the percentage of shots taken on 2-pointers, 3-pointers, and then free throws. So Sacramento 44% taken on twos, 32% on threes, and 22% on free throws. Down in cell A34, write the text average, and then next to it, I'm just going to average column B using the average function, equals average, open bracket, B4 to B33. If you drag that across, you might notice a little difference, but that's unimportant because of the data we've imported is rounded, so there will be an error to the nth decimal place, but that's all right. In column K and L, create the headers ATT and DEF. They're going to be our attack and defense ratings. To find the attack rating for the Kings, divide cell B4 by B34. Absolute reference to B34 though, so that we can drag it across and down. And we've got a figure of 1.05 here, but we're not done yet. We want to revert this a quarter back to the mean. So what we'll do is equals 1 plus 2 open brackets minus 1. So you're going to close the bracket now and then multiply this by 0.75, and we're reverting at 25% back to the mean because we don't know how strong a team, due to roster changes or even injuries, will be in the 23-24 season. So we can get these attack and defending stats, but we're going to level the playing field by reverting at 25% back to the mean. So Sacramento have an attacking rating of 1.04 and a defending rating of 1.02, meaning they score 1.04 times the league average, which means they're 4% better, and they also concede 1.02 times more points than the league average, so they're 2% worse than the average team in defense. So now I'm going to add a little border here. Right, so if we go over to Sacramento, all the way down to Miami Heat, select all that, we're going to name this range teams. So A4 to A33, teams, up in that top left-hand corner box. Go down to cell B34, name this cell average points, average underscore points. Great. Now, if you go over to column D, highlight D4 to D33, name this X underscore FGA underscore FTA. Press enter. We're now going to name column E, and the reason we're naming all these ranges is to make it easier to reference on later on in our formulas. Just streamlines everything. 2 underscore PA underscore POSS, so 2-point possession. F4 to F33, name this 2 underscore P, enter. And all these named ranges will be stored in the formulas bar. So 3 underscore PA underscore POSS. So in the formulas tab above, there's a formulas icon, so you can manage all these formulas if you wanted to. 3 underscore P, enter. That refers to the 3-point percentage. Free throw possession. So again, this is the percentage of shots taken on free throws. FTA underscore POSS, free throw attempt possessions. Free throws, that's just going to be FT underscore P. Enter. Now our attacking ratings. So this is a team's attacking strength relative to the league average. It's just going to be ATT. Enter. And same thing for the defensive ratings, but obviously instead it's going to be DEF. Press enter. Great. Now lads, we're going to create a new worksheet and call it NBA Tournament Fixtures. Easy. So we can create a banner at the top and call it, yeah, just NBA tournament fixtures. Add a little border there. And now we're going to create a little table like so. So we have the groups. We will split it up into the East and West conferences, and then the divisions or the groups: West A, West B, West C, East A, East B, and East C. And then you're going to have to manually write out all the teams according to the NBA 2023 to 24 in-season tournament groups. So in West A, we've got the Grizzlies, Suns, Lakers, Jazz, and Blazers. In cell A4, write team number, and then from A6 to A10, write out the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy. So now in cells A12 to Q12, we're going to create another sort of banner, and in here write West A fixtures. So here we're going to be simulating all the games in the West A group or division, including the Grizzlies, Suns, Lakers, Jazz, and Blazers. So in cell A14, write down teams, and then under it you're going to write this pattern. So it's 1 2 1 3 1 4 1 5 2 3 2 4 2 5, and then it's 3 4 3 5, and then 4 5, stretching down to cell A34. And this is just the matchup of teams. So teams 1 and 2 will play first, then teams 1 and 3, then teams 1 and 4, 1 and 5, all the way down to 4 and 5. So everybody plays each other once. Now in cell B14, write the text match, and then merge and center the cells B15 to B16. Inside here, we're just going to write number 1. So #1. If you drag that down to the end, that'll create 10 matches for us. And so on the left in the A column, you'll see next to match 1 is teams 1 and 2, and then next to match 6 is teams 2 and 4. That ensures everybody plays each other once. So in cell C15 to cell 16, I'm just going to create a little border here, so it'll be easier for us to keep track of who's playing who in this, because our data will stretch across to column Q. So paste special formatting, because I've copied from C15 to C16, and then upon pasting I've just pasted the formatting. Right, so in cell 14, write team, and we're just going to list our team here using a simple XLOOKUP function. So equals XLOOKUP, our lookup value is the cell A15, our team number. We're looking it up in cells A6 to A10, make sure to absolute reference that. And then for the West A fixtures, obviously we're looking up in the B6 to B10 range, we're returning that range. And for matchup 1, it's the Grizzlies and Suns. Matchup 2, Grizzlies and Lakers. That stretches all the way down to Jazz and Blazers. Now in cell D14, write the header expected points. These are going to be our expected points for the game. So look up Memphis Grizzlies, and we're going to look them up in the teams range we named before. And our return array is their attack rating. Multiply this by another XLOOKUP function, and our lookup value is the away team. So that's going to be the Suns in cell C16. Look them up in the array teams, again in the NBA raw stats worksheet, comma, DEF, we're returning the Suns or the opposition's defensive rating, and then multiply by average points, which was that, I believe, 114.7 figure in the NBA raw stats worksheet. Once you've done that, press enter, and we can see for the Grizzlies, they are expected to score 114.0 points against the Phoenix Suns in this matchup. So we can do the same thing for the Suns or the away team in this matchup 1. We're looking up C16, the Suns, in the list of teams and returning their attacking rating, multiplying by the Grizzlies. We're looking them up in teams and returning their defensive rating. Again, multiply it by average underscore points, which was the average points scored by a team in the league. And if we put this to one decimal place, you can see the Suns are expected to score 112.6 points in this matchup, less than the Grizzlies, so it means the Grizzlies are a stronger team. Highlight cells A15 to A16 and then drag this to the bottom. It's really important you highlight A15 and A16 instead of just A15 before auto-filling down, because it's a different pattern for the away team because we've got a reference cell 15, which is a cell above. So A15, A16, and then drag all the way down. And next column is going to be the expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts for the home and away team in the matchup. So we've actually forgotten to name one last range. That's going to be B4 to B33. Name that points underscore scored. So B4 to B33 in NBA Raw Stats, point underscore scored. We're going to use this now. So open bracket, XLOOKUP, open bracket. We're looking up the home team in C15, comma, our lookup array, we're looking them up in teams, and then returning their X underscore FGA underscore FTA, their expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts. Divide this by an XLOOKUP function. So looking up Grizzlies again in the array teams, and then we're returning their points underscore scored range. So close the bracket twice, times this by the expected points. And the reason we're doing this is if the Grizzlies are expected to score, say, 110 points, then their expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts will be less than if they're expected to score, say, 120 points. So the next header in cell F14 is 2PA possession, and then this is just going to be the percentage of shots taken by the home team in their field goal and free throw attempts. So it's just looking up C15 in 2PA possessions. That's the range we named earlier. For the 2-point percentage, look up C15 within teams and return their 2-point percentage. This is just the amount of 2-pointers they make. So really simple. Revert to one decimal place. The next column header in column H is 3-point attempt to possession. So yeah, that's just 3 underscore PA underscore possession. That's the percentage of shots that are threes. And obviously our next column will be the percentage of threes made. And the reason why we're getting the, percentage of shots taken by 2-pointers, 3-pointers, free throws, and the percentage of those variations of shots they actually make is because it's really important simulating the expected points. We can't just get that 114 figure for the Memphis Grizzlies and apply, say, a Poisson distribution straight to it because, the points are made up of different inputs. So it's made up of 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers. So we've actually got to separate them into 2-pointers, 3-pointers, and free throws, and then simulate those scoring shots individually using the binomial distribution. And then, of course, once you've done that, you can sum these points to get your final score for the game. So speaking of the final score, in column L14 as the column header for L, put the text points. We're going to leave this column blank for now. First, though, in column M, write the text regular time points. So reg time points. And here we're going to simulate the regular time points scored using the binomial inverse function. So it's going to be equals 2 times binom.inv. Our number of trials is another binom.inv function, open bracket. So we're going to put the cell E15. Now that's the number of field goal attempts plus free throw attempts. Make sure you absolute reference the column E and not the row 15, comma, absolute reference F, cell 15. And the alpha is the RAND function. So comma, RAND, open bracket, close that binomial inverse function, comma, probability S, G15, absolute reference the column, comma, RAND function, close the bracket. So now we're going to plus the amount of 3-pointers and their points deriving from it. So plus 3 times binomial inverse, open bracket, binomial inverse, the amount of trials, the expected field goals, and then comma, probability of making a 3-point shot is H15, and we're simulating this, so our alpha is the RAND function, open bracket, close the bracket, comma, the probability of actually making a 3-point shot is I15, comma, RAND, close bracket, plus, and now it's 1 time, so now we're just simulating the points scored off free throws, binomial inverse, open bracket, the amount of trials is itself a binomial inverse function, so the amount of trials is E15, comma, probability of taking a free throw in our shots is 20% in J15, comma, rand function, comma, the probability of making a free throw is cell K15. Again, always absolute referencing the column and not the row, comma, rand, open bracket, close bracket, press enter. And for this simulation, the Grizzlies have scored 96 points. And if you press backspace or refresh a cell, the points change according to the binomial inverse function. So now we've got 115. And if you drag it down all the way to cell M34, you can see the Portland Trail Blazers have scored 109 points. And then in this matchup 8, the Lakers have absolutely thrashed Utah 153-98. Now, what happens if we end up in a tie? So overtime number 1 in cell N14, and drag that down or across to column Q. And what these will basically do is, if there's a tie in column M after regular time, we're going to make it go to overtime and keep playing that game until there's a clear winner. So if we go to cell M15 and copy the formula, so copy that, we can go back into cell N15 and start our overtime formula, and it's much the same. That's why we copied the formula in M15. It's going to be an if function, equals if, open bracket, if the sum of M15, absolute reference to the column, to M15, no absolute reference, close bracket, minus the sum of the M16 to M16 range. So you'll notice if the sum of the home team points minus the sum of the away team points equals 0, then we're going to return M15, which is the home team points, plus, and then paste the function below. So we're going to simulate again, but overtime's only 5 minutes. So value if false, comma, speech mark, close the bracket. But yeah, as I was saying, it's only 5 minutes. So we've actually got to multiply the number of trials in every binomial inverse function by 5 divided by 48, because our formula before was for a full 48-minute game. Now, because we're only playing 5 minutes of overtime in overtime number 1, we've got to multiply each trial by 5 divided by 48, so we don't get an overtime number 1 score of 240 to, 100. So this game hasn't gone to overtime. That's why it's not showing up in this cell. Drag that down only to cell N16. Now we're going to fix something up a bit here, because you'll notice it's summing M16 minus M17. We want it to keep being M15 minus M16. So just manually change the ranges in here to M15 and M16 so the formula's correct. Now if you press enter to this, great. Now select cells N15 to N16, and then you can drag those cells all the way down. And because you've selected them both, you can drag them down and across, and it'll update for each game. We can check the opposition, Portland Trail Blazers in matchup 10, and yep, we've got that 33, the sum of row 33 minus 34, which is correct. Couple simulations, and we can see in this game between the Lakers and Jazz, it's gone to overtime, and the Jazz have won on 140 to 127. Because it's won there, there's no need for overtime 2, 3, and 4. Now, after another simulation, go into cell L15, and the number of points in the game is just going to be the maximum of that range, M15 to Q15. Drag that down, so if it goes to overtime, you can see the overtime final score is recorded rather than the regular time points simulated score. Great, lads. Now, the next step is to do the same thing for the West B group, West C, East A, East B, and East C group. So it's actually really simple. Just copy the banner down. I'll paste that in cell A36. So I'm only going to do the West B fixtures, and then I'll fast forward through the West C and all the Eastern Conference simulated games. but I'll show you how to do it for West B. So copy this whole range from A14 to Q34, paste that in cell A38 or one row under the West B banner, and you're going to scroll down. The only thing you need to change is the team, because the expected points all the way to overtime number 4 column, they're already loaded in formulas we created up in cell A14 or A15. So the only thing we need to change is the teams it's calculating for. So all we have to do is change the return array of the XLOOKUP function to the West B group. So C6 to C10, absolute reference this, and we get the nuggets now, and the expected points changes as the teams change, and as do our stats all across the right here. And so now we've got correct simulations, and we can do the same thing for West C and the whole Eastern Division. So I'll fast forward through all of this, and you'll be able to see the really quick process. All it is copying and pasting, and again changing those teams, because the expected points all the way through to overtime number 4, they're already loaded in. Once you've done that, we're going to create a new worksheet titled NBA Simulated Results. Alright, and you're going to create a header up the top here, stretching from cell A1 to AA1, and then write simulated results, NBA simulated results, plus table, because in this worksheet we'll be creating a table of standings for each group. Now from A3 to H3, create a banner by merging and centering the cells, and write West A games. In cell A4, write the text matchup, and then from A5 to A14, write the games 1 through to 10. So it's just a sequence 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10. Now we can, in cells A4 to H4, center the text and create a little border. And basically what we're going to do in this table is just tabulate all the games and the points that'll contribute to our table of standings we'll create to the right of this table. So copy this and then paste it for the whole table, and right click, paste special, and we're only pasting the formatting. So none of the values, just the formatting, so it looks like so. Now the next column header in B4 is going to be group, and below it it's just going to be for the West A games table, all West A. So go into NBA tournament fixtures, and it's in B5, sorry. B5 is the West A group. Drag that down all the way to matchup 10, and we've got our list of groups there. And in C4, write home team. Below the home team, it's just going to be the home team. So we'll use the equals offset function, open bracket. Our reference cell will be the first home team in the West A fixtures table. That's in C15 of the tournament fixtures spreadsheet, comma, the amount of rows. So it's going to be -2 plus, if we go back into our NBA simulated results worksheet, -2 plus A5. So it's just A5. We can delete that bit, doesn't matter really. Multiplied by 2, right? So comma 0, close bracket, and we get the Memphis Grizzlies. If we drag that down, we will get for matchup 10 the 10th home team in the group, which is Utah Jazz. And then now in column N, we can do the same thing for the away team. So it'll be exactly the same. We'll use the offset function, but our reference cell will instead be the first away team rather than the home team. So it's still equals offset, open bracket, and our reference cell's C16, which is the Phoenix Suns, comma, our rows is -2 plus A5, and that A5 or the matchup is multiplied by 2, so that for the first matchup the amount of columns we drop, rows we drop is 0, then for the next matchup it's 2, 4, 6, etc., all the way to the 10th match of the group stage. Now in column E, write the header points, and we can use another offset function to find the points the home team has scored in this game. So equals offset. The reference cell is this time going to be in column L, which is the number of points the home team has scored in that game. L15, comma, -2 plus A5 times 2, as always, and the number of columns is 0. Close the bracket, drag that down, and you'll get the home points for every team in the group. Now, we can do the same exact thing, except we have to, for the away points, except we have to change the B5 to A5, and the L15 to L16. So drag that down, fill without formatting, put the points header above the away points, and great. So now we have our home team, away team, and we've tabulated the points each of them have scored. So in column D and column G, write the header first points. And this refers to what we're going to do later on, is it grants teams tiebreaker points in the event they finish with the same record. So if both have a record, both teams, say the Suns and Grizzlies, have a record of 75% in the group stage, then whoever wins that game will receive a certain amount of first points that'll contribute to their overall ranking, which ranks them 1 through to 5 in the group stage. Now, lads, we're going to create a new table, a new header rather, from P4 to S4, and write the headers in P4. Team, Q4 wins, R4 PD, standing for point differential, and then S4 points scored, or PS. So grabbing the team, it's just going to be equals NBA tournament fixtures B6 to B10. So we're just grabbing those 5 teams. Now we want to try and come up with a formula that counts the number of wins the Grizzlies all the way through to the Blazers have scored. It's going to be open bracket, sum product. We're using the sum product function. 2 open brackets. Our first array is E5 to E14, absolute reference this. And we want that to be more than the away points, F5 to F14, right? So close bracket, multiply this criteria by our next criteria, that being C5 to C14 has to be equal to P5, which is the Memphis Grizzlies. So what this basically means, close bracket twice, is it's grabbing the amount of times the team in P5 has scored more points than the away team. Plus sum product, 2 open brackets. Now we're doing the same thing, but if a team's playing away. So how many times F5 to F14 is greater than E5 to E14? The away points is greater than the home points. Multiplied by the second criteria, open bracket, H5 to H14. The away team has to be equal to P5. 3 close brackets, divide by 4, because that's the amount of games each team plays, and we get 0.75 for the Grizzlies, meaning that they've won 3 out of 4 games. So they beat the Suns, they beat the Lakers, they beat the Jazz, and then they've lost here 87-128 to the Blazers. Now here they've only won 1 single game out of the 4 games, and this time their only win comes against the Blazers. So you can see the nature of the simulations here. Autofill that down, change it to a percentage, and the sum of the percentage should always be 250%, or 5, because 5 games are won and 5 games are lost. So that makes intuitive sense. Now, a different formula for the point differential. It's going to be open bracket, sum if, open bracket. C5 to C14 is our range. Our criteria, of course, is going to be the home team. We're picking up the home team in P5, and then we're summing the amount of points they've scored, E5 to E14. Close bracket. Now we've got to do the same thing for the Memphis Grizzlies if they play away. So it's going to be plus sum if, open bracket, H5 to H14. We're picking up the Grizzlies in the list of away teams in P5. And we're summing the range F5 to F14. So close that bracket twice. Now we have to minus the amount of points they've conceded. So point differential is points scored minus points conceded, or points against. So it's just minus open bracket, sum if, open bracket. We're searching up the Memphis Grizzlies in the home team, C5 to C14, P5, and then we're summing the F5 to F14 range, or the away team points. So plus sum if, open bracket, H5 to H14, the away teams. We're picking up the Grizzlies in P5, and we're summing the home points. So you can see if the team's playing away, we sum the home points, that gets the points conceded. Close that bracket twice, return, and we can see here the Grizzlies have a differential of 5. So they've scored 5 more points than they've conceded throughout the tournament, in the group stage at least, and autofill that down to the Portland Trail Blazers. Reminder, the sum of the point differential for all 5 teams should equal 0, as in the tournament there can only be as many points scored as there are conceded. Now for the points scored formula in cell S5, it's just going to be the first half of the point differential formula, because of course the point differential formula is points scored minus points conceded. So equals, paste that into S5, drag that down, and we can do a few more simulations after putting a border at the bottom of row 9 here. And now we've grabbed our 5 teams, their record, their point differential, and their points scored. Now our next step is to create a table stretching out from column U to column X, and in cell U4 to X4 type in the text teams first, teams second, teams third, and teams fourth. Now the purpose of this table is to split teams up into the first, second, third, and fourth highest score in the single simulation. So let's have an example here. The team with the first highest amount of points in this group stage is the Jazz, so they'll appear in this column here, the U column. Now the Suns and the Lakers are tied on the second highest amount of points, so they'll appear here in the V column. And then the Grizzlies and Trailblazers have the third highest scores. So we can approach this by, in cell U5, entering the formula equals if, open bracket, if Q5 equals the maximum score of Q5 to Q9, absolute reference this, close bracket, then return P5, which is the team. If not, speech mark, close bracket, which returns nothing. So here the Grizzlies did have the highest score, but as we do more simulations, it leaves a blank space if they don't. In this simulation, the Suns have the single highest score. In this one, there's 3 teams stuck on 75%, so we know our formula's right. Now for team second, it's going to be a slightly different formula. Go up to the formula bar, and it's going to be equals if, another if function, open bracket. Our test is if Q5 equals the function large, open bracket, our array is Q5 to Q9, and our K value, aka the kth largest number we want to pick up, is a countif function. So countif, open bracket, our range is Q5 to Q9, and our criteria is the max function. So max, open bracket, we want to find the maximum in Q5 to Q9 and how many times it occurs in the Q5 to Q9 range, plus 1, close bracket, comma, P5 is our value if it's true, comma, speech mark, nothing is our value if it's false. So close the bracket, and I'll wrap this in an if error function so that if there's an error, return speech mark, which is nothing. And here it's picked up the Memphis Grizzlies have the second highest score in the simulation, which is correct. Drag that down, and here we've got 4 teams with either the first or second highest score. Now for the team's third formula, go up to the formula bar, and it's going to be equals, and then another if function, equals if Q5, so the team's win percentage, equals large, again our array is Q5 to Q9. This time it's going to be comma, open bracket, 10 minus count if. So the reason why it's 10 is because the number of cells in U5 to V9 is 10. So 10 minus count if, open bracket, our range from U5 to V9, absolute references, speech mark, and then close the bracket, plus 1, comma, P5, comma, speech mark, close bracket, comma, speech mark. So return nothing if that is false. And of course, we'll wrap it in an if error function. So now we can add the speech marks. And we have one more close bracket to add. That's going to be after the plus 1 here. Enter that formula, and it comes up blank for the Grizzlies because they've already got the highest amount of points. Drag that down, and in this simulation, the Grizzlies have the third amount of highest points with 25% as their win record. Now, it is the exact same formula for the team's fourth function in cell X5, but this time, instead of the 10 minus count if, because the range U5 to W9, or the teams we've already done so far, has 15 cells. It's going to be 15 minus the countif function. So we'll start off with equals if Q5 equals large, open bracket. Now our array, of course, is Q5 to Q9. Absolute reference this, so it doesn't move when we autofill it down. Comma, open bracket, 15 minus count if. So we're counting how many times teams appear from that U5 to W9 range. Absolute reference this, and our criteria is nothing. So speech mark, close bracket, plus 1, close bracket, comma, P5 is our team, comma, speech mark. Now let's wrap in an if error function, comma, speech mark, close bracket. So drag that down all the way. And great, now we've got our team's first, second, third, and fourth highest points. And if you saw in one of the simulations there were 5 teams with the highest amount of points in their win percentage, with 50% each. That's the only scenario where they can all have the highest win record. Now, lads, on the right here, I'm going to create a new table stretching from column Z to AA. Now, in column Z, write the header team in cell Z4, and then in AA4, write the header win points. Now, a list of teams is P5 to P9, or P5 hash if you're working with one of the newer versions of Excel, but we can't actually fill out the win points until we've filled out these columns here, D and G, the first points we created in the West Day Games table. And what they basically do is, if we say have 2 teams tied, so Memphis Grizzlies and the Utah Jazz here are both tied on a win record of 50%. To break that tie in the standings, the NBA requires the head-to-head between the Grizzlies and the Jazz to be taken into account. So here the Jazz won the matchup 130 to 127 against the Grizzlies. So in our model, they'll be granted certain points that go towards their ranking points that'll put them ahead of the Grizzlies in the final table. So this is the formula in cell D5 equals if, open bracket, and open bracket, count if, open bracket. Now our range is U5 to U9, and the criteria is going to be the Memphis Grizzlies in C5. Close the bracket. If that is greater than 0, well, we also need our second criteria, because the AND function requires both the arguments to be true. So we want the Memphis Grizzlies to be greater than 0 in the range U5 to U9. And we also want, with our second counting function, the Phoenix Suns to be greater than 0 in U5 to U9, if that makes sense. So we're trying to see if both the Grizzlies and the Suns are in U5 to U9, then if, open bracket, E5 is greater than F5, the Grizzlies points is greater than the Suns points, return 1000. If not, return 0, close bracket. And if all that is false, return 0 anyway. So close the bracket. And yeah, so if the Grizzlies or Suns appear in the U5 to U9 range, they'll get the 1000 points, whoever wins that game. So we've got to do the same thing for the V column, or the teams appearing in the team's second column. If, open bracket, and, open bracket, count if. So in the range V5 to V9, if C5 appears more than 0 times, comma, we also need count if, open bracket, in V5 to V9 again, comma, our criteria is H5, the away team, close bracket. We need that to be greater than 0 again, close bracket, comma. And if that's true, we want to return an if function. So if E5 is greater than F5, return 1000 for the Grizzlies. If not, return 0, close bracket. If all that's false, return 0 anyway, close bracket. Let's do the same thing for the team's third column. Plus if, and open bracket, and open bracket, count if. In the W5 to W9 range, we need C5 or the Grizzlies to appear more than once. We also need, in the next count if function, the range W5 to W9 again, we need H5. So our criteria is H5 or the Phoenix Suns, the away team. We need them to appear more than once. If that's true, if they both appear more than once in the W5 to W9 range, return this if function. If the Grizzlies points is greater than the Suns points, return 1000. If they aren't, return 0. If all that's false, return 0 again, close the bracket. And time for our last if function plus if open bracket and open bracket count if x5 to x9 if the Grizzlies appear more than once in the x5 to x9 range. We also need the Suns to appear more than once in the x5 to x9 range in h5. Close the bracket, greater than 0, close bracket. If that's true, return the if function. If e5 is greater than f5, if the Grizzlies score more than the Suns, give them 1,000 points for a win. If not, return 0, close bracket, comma, 0, close bracket. And that's our function. Drag that all the way down to the Jazz in matchup 10, fill without formatting. And we can see here the Lakers have been awarded 1,000 points, meaning they beat the Jazz in a matchup where they were both on the same win record, and that is true. They both had the third best record on 25% in this simulation. Now we have to do the same thing for the away team. So what we can do, we can copy this whole formula, paste it into G5, but we're not done just yet. Instead of E5 being greater than F5 or the home team having more points than the away team, we want to switch that around. So we want to record or give the Suns 1,000 points. So therefore F5 is greater than E5. So whenever you see an E, replace it with F. Whenever you see an F, replace it with E. So we want F5 to be greater than E5 to give G5 the 1,000 points. Replace that with E, press enter. Drag that down all the way to the bottom once you've played around with some simulations. All the way down to G14, fill without formatting. And here we have 1,000 points given out, and it changes for nearly every simulation. Back into the win points AA column over here and come up with a points figure for the Grizzlies, Suns, Lakers, Jazz, and Blazers that'll rank them from 1 through to 5. So for the Grizzlies, it's going to be equals their win record multiplied by 100,000. So Q5 times 100,000 plus in brackets, sum if, open bracket. Now what we're summing, our range is C5 to C14. Our criteria is obviously Z5, so it's picking up wherever the Memphis Grizzlies appears in the C column, and we're summing their first points. So D5 to D14, absolute reference this. Then we're going to plus another sum if function. This time we're taking into account if the Memphis Grizzlies play an away game, so H5 to H14. If Z5, the Memphis Grizzlies appear, comma, sum the first points range from G5 to G14. Close the bracket twice, then you're going to add the point differential in R5, then you're going to add the points scored in S5, and then multiply S5 by 1 divided by 100,000. Close the bracket, press enter, and the Grizzlies have win points of 100,056, implying they've won all their games and they have a point differential of 56. And that point scored is too small of a decimal to show to 2 decimal places. Now add a bottom border to this, and we're able to rank our teams now. So between the Grizzlies and the Suns, they've both won 3 games, but the Suns get that extra 1,000 points because in their head-to-head matchup, they beat the Grizzlies 117 to 112. Let's make a new table. So in J3 to N3, create a header called West A Standings. And in here, we're going to make a standings to rank our teams in the group from 1 through to 5. So add some borders to this. And then in cell J4, write the header rank and list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, representing first place, second place through to 5th place. Now copy and paste special the formatting so we get boxes like this, and then in K4 write the header team. Now we're just grabbing the team finishing in first place by using an XLOOKUP formula, so equals XLOOKUP, open bracket, large, open bracket, AA5 to AA9, absolute reference this, comma, and the K value is J5, so we're finding the first highest value, close bracket, comma. Our lookup array is obviously AA5 to AA9, So we're looking up a team in AA5 to AA9 that finished in first place according to the win points, and then we're returning the list of teams themselves. So that's the Grizzlies in Z5 through to Z9. Absolute reference this, close the bracket, press enter, and in this simulation the Utah Jazz have finished first, and we can double check that they have the highest win percentage. Drag that down, fill without formatting, and then in this simulation the Jazz have actually finished last and the Suns have finished first. We can do a few more simulations. Then in cell L4, write the column header record, and we're just going to do a quick X lookup to return the Trailblazers all the way through to the Jazz record or win percentage. So we're looking up K5 in the array of teams in P5 hash, or P5 to P9. Absolute reference this, and we're returning the win percentage in Q5 to Q9. Close the bracket, and we're going to change this to a percentage after fill without formatting. So the Utah Jazz are on top with 75%. And because of that win points calculation we did, we're able to rank the Lakers ahead of the Suns when they're tied on 50%. Now for the point differential in column M, we're looking up K5 in the P5 to P9 range, and we're returning R5 to R9. Absolute reference this, drag down. And you can see the two teams, Grizzlies and Blazers, who were tied on win percentage, but the Grizzlies were ahead on point differential according to our win points formula. P5, and we're returning S5 to S9 for points scored. Drag that down. Excellent. So now we've got our simulated standings for Group A, West A, and we can do that a few more times. The next step though is to do this for every single group. So West A, West B, West C, and as well as the Eastern Conference. So you're going to select cells A3 through to AA14, copy, and then paste in A16 below. And there's a few changes we'll need to make that I'll run you through in order for the formulas to update to the West B group. So first we're going to change the group to C5 in NBA tournament fixtures. That's the West B one. And for the offset function, we want to change our reference cell. We're going to scroll down and select the first home team appearing in match 1, and that's cell C39 of NBA tournament fixtures. Drag that down so it updates the Nuggets, Clippers, Pelicans, the Mavericks as our teams there. Update the same thing. It's going to be row 39 instead of 19 or 15 was what it was before. And then the away points is just going to be 39 plus 1. So the offset reference cell is L40, and it's going to be C40 here as well. So update that to C40. And the F and H columns will always have a reference cell one row below the columns in C and D. Now we still have to do the first points, they're not updating, but before we do that, we'll update column P, and we'll just select our list of teams C6 to C10 in NBA tournament fixtures. To update the win record, all we're going to do is take the E5 to E14 range, drag it to the relevant cells in E18 to E27 for our new table. And these 18 and 27 figures, we're just going to replace for every 5 and 14 we see. So replace 5 with 18 and 14 with 27. Let's do that now. F18 to F27, E18 to E27, and do the same thing for H. Once you press enter, you'll get the win record. Now, this is a fairly manual process, but the benefit of doing it this way is it's nice and easy to look at, and once it's set up, it's set up. So at the end of the model, if you did want to change the teams around to see the differing probabilities, it would be that easy going into NBA tournament fixtures and typing over the top. So this part is manual, and again, replace 5 and 14 with 18 and 27, doing the same thing as we did in the record for the point differential. The formula doesn't change, only the ranges change, right? So just replacing The Rangers, scroll autofill down, and for points scored, change that 5 and 14 to 18 and 27 again. This should take 30 seconds to a minute for each conference and group in the divisions. Autofill that down, add a border. And now we've got our table for the West B group. We still have to update this table though. Instead of finding the maximum value of Q5 to Q9, we want to find the maximum of Q18 to Q22, right? So press enter, drag that down, and now we have those two numbers, 18 and 22. We can go in and just change in the team's second, team's third, and team's fourth columns. Q18 to Q22, enter. All right, we've done it for team's second now. Drag that down. Let's do the same thing for team's third. Q18 to Q22, U18 to U22 to V22. Scroll down. And then same thing for team's fourth. 18 and 22, 18 and 22. Enter and drag down. Great, now we can run those simulations, and there's only a couple more things we need to update for the West B to be taken properly into account with the new Rangers. Of course, our win points need to be reliant on the first points over here. So we're going to go into column D, and we're going to have to replace all the U5 to U9s with that 18 to 22 range. So every time you see a 5, replace it with 18. Every time you see a 9, replace it with 22. And of course, the basis of this, if we scroll right, is those teams first, teams second columns that extend from row 18 to row 22 for the West B group. So once you've done that, I'll finish it off, X22, press enter. And we can drag this down all the way to the last game when the Mavericks play. Right, so here we've got the Nuggets and the Clippers. Clippers receiving the first points. We need to do the same thing for the away team. And again, just 18 and 22, fairly manual task. That should take you no more than 30 seconds to a minute, provided you replace 5 with 18 and 9 with 22 each time. Enter, drag all the way down for the Rockets at the end, and we have our first points. So now the Houston Nuggets and Clippers are all stuck on 50% win record, and we can see the games where the first points are given out are the games in which the Nuggets, Clippers, and Rockets face each other. We do need to update the ranges on the win points, so we can replace C5 to C14 with C18 to 27. Absolute reference this, and this is our range now, so replace 5 with 18 and 14 with 27. Do the same thing for the second sum if function. And once you've done that, press enter and drag this formula down to the last cell. And now we've got our win points ordered correctly. So in this simulation, the Nuggets, Clippers, and Pelicans all have a 50% win record. And when they've played each other, that's been ordered by the amount of times they've won. They've won one game against each other. And then so the second criteria on which they've been sorted by is their point differentials. Now the last step is updating the standings for the West B group in columns J to N. And going to cell K18, we just need to update the ranges from AA18 to AA22, also Z18. And if we scroll right, that's the list of teams and their win points. So you'll notice once we do that for the first team, so the New Orleans Pelicans have come first in this division, but on the right there's errors. This is because the XLOOKUP function is trying to look up the Dallas Mavericks, the Pelicans, the Nuggets, but in the ranges below. So we need to change that to 18 to 22 now so that it's correct for the P, Q, R, and S columns. So we've done that for the records now. We need to change this from R18 to R22. And then Just as we did for the win record and point differential, do the same thing for the points scored. Change it to the appropriate range, which in this case is 18 to 22. Fill without formatting, and now we've got our standings for the West A and the West B group. So the only steps left is to do it for the West C and all of the Eastern Conference, and I'll do that now. If I scroll down, you can see it has been done exactly how we did it for West A and West B, and if I refresh or backspace on one of the cells, the simulations update and change. Now lads, that's it for part 1. In part 2, we'll be taking these group standings and then simulating the knockout rounds to find the probability of each team winning the NBA 2023-24 in-season tournament. And if you want access to this model reminder, click the link in the description below, become part of the Excel Lads Patreon community, and you'll get access to every single model shown on YouTube plus lots more.